cleaning carpets. Okay. Number 9 said, how come there's no labor? Number 10, he asked about this handwriting and this handwriting. That's number 10. And number 11 is something I'll get to in a minute. He's got 11 questions. But he can't leave the office. Remember, I told him, you have to stay right here. But he has to find out if these things could be true or not. So how do you do it? Question number 1, how do you find out what the industry standard is for an industry? Call somebody in the goddamn industry. Get the yellow pages, call somebody. Now here's how you do it. This is a great method. Remember this forever. Call up the ABC construction company and say, hi, I'm a government CPA looking into potential fraud by one of your competitors. I'll take that call. One of my competitors? Which one? Well, I can't really tell you yet, but can you tell me, what is the industry standard for a $7 million job? Would the bid and acceptance be 1 page? He goes, no, it would look like a small phone book. It'd be 80 pages. Would it be bid to the penny? There's no such thing as bidding to the penny. And he said something else, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So right away, he knows that numbers 1 and 2 are totally outside of the normal industry standards. So let's say he called 3 or 4 companies, and they all say the same thing. Then he says, are you guys mad that you always lose these multi-million-dollar jobs to Z-Best? He goes, we've never heard of Z-Best in our industry. Well, thank you. Did either of those prove fraud? No. But those are good tier 2 questions. But then he looks at number 3 and he says, how can I find out if that's the right sales tax? Sales tax is very important, isn't it? How did Dennis Kozlowski get caught? Because he was too cheap to pay sales tax on some art to New York, so he claimed that the art was actually purchased in New Hampshire. And that's how the feds got him. So he was in jail for 8 years and lost billions of dollars over sales tax. So they call up the sales tax people in California. He goes, is this the proper sales tax for a construction job? And the woman says, well, I can tell you what the proper sales tax for a construction job is. 0. You don't pay sales tax on construction. Now, what's a good tier 2 question now? Mark, why did you send a check to the State Board of Equalization for $300,000? You don't pay it. Don't you know that, Mark? Tier 3 question. If you're claiming you sent it in by accident, where's the refund check, Mark? We've got this anomaly. We know, because this document, as I told you, has been audited a million times, there's backup paperwork to this, hundreds of pages of it, and somewhere there's a Xerox copy of a cashier's check made out to the State Board of Equalization for that amount in the audit papers. And on the day that check was bought, there's a bank statement that says, yes, indeed, a $300,000 check was bought that day. So we know the paperwork all adds up, yet that's impossible. Number 4, what did he find out from the man that he called? He said, by state law, the address of all construction sites must be on each page of any bid, by law. So the address isn't there. So that's illegal in the state of California. Number 5, that's just stupid. Number 6, there's no reason in the world for a customer to be an appraiser. We claimed that as tier 1 answer, I said, well, it's the appraiser who oversees the job. He's the person I deal with. So to us, he's our customer. So you say, is that consistent in the insurance industry? Anybody here ever work in insurance? He calls 2 insurance companies and go, no, that's impossible. There's no way you could have a buffer of an appraiser between the customer and a finished job. Number 8, those things look like what you'd have for carpet cleaning because that's what they were. Because this is the exact same invoice we would give you to do your living room, dining room, and hall for $39.95. Number 9, there's no labor because I forgot. Okay, I screwed up. But number 10 is the one that I love the most because the auditors asked me, Mark, how much carpet's in that building? And I said 379,000 square yards of carpet. And that number showed up on 86 different documents. 379,000 square yards of carpet. Do you know how many square feet that is? Almost 3.5 million. Do you know how big a building has to be to have 3.5 million square feet of carpet? 72 stories. But how big is this building? It's 16 stories. Nobody ever said, how do you do that, Mark? We could have carpeted the building, the outside of the building, the roofs, the parking structure, and half of downtown Sacramento, and not used up that kind of carpeting. And number 11, he was told by the construction worker that by state law you have to have your contractor's license number on all documents, on all trucks, on all business cards. You must have a contractor's license number. Do you see a license number in that upper corner? No, you don't. This accountant sat there and came up with those questions with a little prodding from me. And by using only the phone was able to do what? Prove that document can't be real. There might be a building in Sacramento that had work done on, but that document has nothing to do with it. And he found that out, one, because he was looking for it. Now, I actually took the auditors to the building. We walked through this building, but guess what? I couldn't find an 18-story building in Sacramento. I couldn't find a 16-story building. The nearest I could come was 18. And so I convinced the leasing agent to give me the keys and let me walk through the building on a Sunday. I flew the auditors up there. We walked through this building that I'd never set foot in before the day before, and I said, we did good work here. And they all nodded and said, okay. And we flew back home, and we had a big party at a very famous place called the Playboy Mansion, and we had a lot of fun. Now, why didn't somebody ask those other tiered questions? Because I had groomed them to accept the nonsense that I'd been telling them. Notice that my numbers were always perfect. During the civil trial, every single person that was deposed said, God, his numbers were so perfect. They were so perfect. Fraudulent numbers are always perfect. Why? Because we back into everything. People said, how did you know on September 12th you had to buy a check for $300,000? I go, I didn't. I bought one for $300,000, and 3 months later, I made a Xerox copy of the cashier's check I got and attributed it to that. So, of course, my bank statements always added up perfectly. For God's sakes, I was the only one doing them. We back into every single number, which is why my paperwork was never ready whenever somebody asked me for it. But why did they let me get away with it? Because I'm stupid. Mark's dumb. He can never find his paperwork. No, the real truth is I ask you what you want, and then I lock myself in my room for 4 straight days, nonstop, taking diet pills, and I create 600 documents. And I go, oh, you wanted to audit our purchases? There they are. I finally found them. Because every single document was created after the fact. Nobody planned anything. This is success by blunder. Now, I'm going to remember I said that there is, you can analyze a document, and I could show you hundreds. In my long seminar, I bring in dozens and dozens of documents, and we go through them kind of slowly, and people start yelling out the tier 1, 2, and 3 questions, and lo and behold, they go, this is like a great little inverted pyramid. You get right to it. Either it's a mistake or it's fraud. There's no middle ground. It's unexplainable or it's fraud. And that's all we do. But sometimes the story isn't ever written. It's verbal. In fact, more times than not, Jeff Skilling and Ken Lay both have a great chance of going to jail for verbal stories. But they're stories that everyone believed at the time. Now, one day during what's called an all-hands meeting, is anyone familiar with that term? When you're doing a public offering, you get all the people in one room. It's kind of like this. It'd be 40 people at $400 an hour each that I'm paying for, and I got to feed them. So one day during our lunch break, a busboy comes up to me and says, sir, he goes, I'm taking accounting at LA City College. Can you tell me how you make 50% profit? And I thought, phew. And suddenly I looked, and the whole room stopped, like that old E.F. Hutton commercial, remember? Whole room stopped. Everybody turned and looked at me, and they're all eating. And they're going, yeah, how does Mark do that? Kevin, haven't you thought about this before? Tim, I wondered about that. So now I have to explain how we make a 50% profit. I said the following. All over the southeastern United States, there are American-owned carpet mills that make great carpet, but they can't compete with the Pacific Rim. They're all going bankrupt, and Barry and I have gone down there and spent millions of dollars in cash buying carpet at 5 cents on the dollar from these bankruptcy sales and storing it in our warehouses. And we got the insurance companies to agree to one codicil. When we repair a building, we do not have to replace the carpet with the exact same color of carpet that was there before. As long as it's of equal or better quality, and as long as it's an earth tone, then we can put it in there. But we book it as if we got it at retail or wholesale price, and if you look at every one of our invoices for the $400 million worth of jobs, the single biggest purchase is carpet, and we got that virtually for free, and if you add up the numbers, that's where our profit comes from. And I said, we're going to get out of the restoration business altogether in the next couple of months because we finally run out of carpet. And so magically, when we get our $800 million from Drexel Burnham, we're also going to stop doing restorations. And we can't even sell the division because the truth is we're not a good restoration company, but we lead the industry because we're a good carpet buying company. And I made that story up on the spur of the moment. Was that pretty good or what? Because now I also covered another problem. Because I was trying to think, after we get our money, how do I explain that we gave up doing restorations? Oh, there's a lot of money in it, but... Every person in that room said, you know, Mark, you're brilliant. Isn't he brilliant? I swear to God, this food's good too. You're brilliant. Can anyone here tell me what's wrong with that story? I told you the same story I told them. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you own a car? What color is it? She owns a green car. She gets an fender bender. She brings it to my body shop. I said, I'll fix your car, but when you get it back, it's going to be pink because I got a good deal on pink paint. What is she going to tell me to do with that pink paint? Where am I going to put it? She's going to say, no, Mark, you don't understand. I'm the insured. I tell you what color the carpet's going to be, not the other way around. My story doesn't fit the real world, does it? What's a good tier 2 question? Mark, you say you got this carpet for 5 cents on the dollar in bankruptcy sales because these companies couldn't compete with the Pacific Rim. Why would they sell it for 5 cents? Why wouldn't they sell it for 1 cent less than the Koreans? Right? I mean, if you're going out of business, you're going to sell your whole inventory. Why are you going to give it to me for a nickel? Tier 3 question. How come nobody else in the country knows about these mills in the southeast United States? No one ever. How come? And as each of those questions could have been asked, my answers get more feeble and feeble and feeble until I fall over. But no one ever asked. All they had to do was ask a tier 2 question. They had to say, is this the way the real world works? Can you dictate to an owner who's had damage how you're going to fix his stuff? He'll tell you to screw yourself. And so will the insurance company. But the story explained something. And what did it explain? It explained magically how those profits came. And so in every single accountant's head, you know what he did? He put a little check mark in his brain next to the middle of every one of our invoices and said, that's where all that profit comes from. And that's why Mark will walk away from this business instead of selling it. And yet all they had to do was ask the most rudimentary questions. And you know who are usually the people who come up with the great answers to lead you to know it's fraud? The ones Bill talked about, the guys at the bottom. Very famous case called Whitaker Aluminum. They sell their company to another company, and the other company hires some auditors. The auditors come in and look at all of this aluminum in a warehouse, and they have to put the inventory down accurately. They looked at the pallets. These pallets had huge spools of aluminum cable, like those telephone pools. They were everywhere, dozens of. They're different kinds of aluminum, different grades. They weigh 55,000 pounds, and they're all over this warehouse. And they went to each and every one of them and read the specifications and came back with a dollar number that was 90% off. Or actually, no, 900% off. And they got sued. And in court, they had to try to explain how they do this inventory system. And they brought in expert witnesses. But what they didn't realize was that the guy who cleans up the warehouse had a bunch of photographs of the forklifts that lift up those pallets. And on the forklift, it said maximum lifting capability, 8,000 pounds. How does he move 55,000-pound pallets with an 8,000 maximum forklift? He doesn't. You know why? They don't weigh 50,000 pounds. They weigh 5,000 pounds, and all the fraudsters did was add a zero. Add a zero. That's how you make an $80,000 profit and $800,000 profit. Add a zero. It's a little circle. Sometimes they're blue. Sometimes they're black. They go on a piece of paper. These guys look like idiots because the guy at the very bottom of the rung said, wait a minute, that aluminum isn't heavy, you idiots. There's not 55,000 pounds of aluminum in a Boeing 767, let alone on this little spool. That also goes on the back of our pickup truck. You know what happens if you put 55,000 pounds on a pickup truck? You talk about a flatbed, you got a flat truck. But no one bothered to ask the follow-up questions. Can you imagine how stupid our auditors looked during the deposition of the civil trial, how bad they would have looked on the witness stand if they had to say, well, no, we really never really verified any of this stuff that Mark told us. We just kind of, we just, it's not my job, but